Welcome to the Jess Larson Show on Innovation and Leadership. Excited this week to have Pat Flynn and Matt Gartland. Guys, thanks for doing this.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Pat, do you want to kick us off for a second and just tell people what SPI is and for the rare person who doesn't know of you, a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. SPI started online in 2008, but it wasn't my first thing I did. In fact, I was set out to be an architect. I went to architecture school and got a great job in the Bay Area and was going to do that for the rest of my life. And then 2008 happened, and I went down along with it. And it was very difficult because I didn't have a plan B. And I was also very upset because I had done everything the way I was supposed to. My parents told me and society taught me I was going to get the home and the white picket fence and 2.5 kids, whatever. Like I was following that path, and then all of a sudden the rug got pulled out under me, and I didn't know what to do. And I actually went to podcasts for some help because there were a lot of podcasts out there that were teaching a lot of stuff in the realm of online business and entrepreneurship. And I was like, wow, maybe I can do something online. But most of what I found was kind of trash. It was like very scummy and very snake oil salesman-like. Although I found one podcast that seemed to just invite really good, honest stories, and it was called Internet Business Mastery. And there was one story I listened to about a guy who was helping people pass the project management exam, the PM exam, and making six figures a year doing so. And it just kind of blew me away because this was very revolutionary around this time, and nobody was really talking about it. And he was just making it sound very simple. And I remember on my way to becoming an architect, there were a lot of exams that I took that didn't have a lot of information online. It was very expensive to take these exams, so you wanted to perform well. And so I said, well, could I be somebody who steps forward online and shares this information and perhaps sells something? I don't know, but I have nothing else to lose, so let's put it out there. And so that's what I did. And I created what's called greenexamacademy.com. The exam was specifically about sustainable buildings and design. And very quickly, I started to notice a lot of traffic coming in from Google because I was one of the only ones just openly talking about this information. And I also noticed my website was also being shared on a lot of forums where architects were coming together to share information about this exam. Oh, you got to check out this resource from this guy named Pat. I don't know who he is, but these are the best tips that I found. And all of a sudden, people started asking me for more help. There was a lot of wonder whether or not I was going down the right path because I didn't consider myself an expert. But I think I was seen as one because I was stepping forward online to talk about this stuff. And to make a long story short, in October 2008, I launched a study guide, and I launched it for $19.99. It was an ebook. Didn't even know what an ebook was at the time, but as soon as a person bought it, it got delivered to their email, and I'd get a PayPal notification. And in that first month, I had made $7,908.55, which was 2.5 times more than I was making as an architect. So I was stoked about it, but I always thought the FBI was going to come and get me because it just did not feel real. It didn't feel like, especially in juxtaposition with the years of schooling to be an architect. And then here I am making 2.5 times more with just a little project. But what ended up happening was a lot of my friends who had also gotten laid off at the time were like, Pat, can you share how you did this? Like, what did you do? And I said, I don't know. I'm just kind of figuring it out along the way. So I know how to build a website and talk about things. Let me build another website and talk about that. And so I just started sharing everything that I was doing, everything I was doing right, everything I was discovering along the way and where I faulted. And eventually that became smartpassiveincome.com, the passive income part being, let's build it in a smart way where we can create systems, we can create information and create courses and such that you don't have to be there to deliver that value after it's created. You invest that time up front, and it could forever, or at least for a long time, continually serve an audience, and you can get paid for that in different ways. And then that, because it was so different and because I was also sharing exactly how much money I was making and where it was coming from, it just started to make waves in the entrepreneurial and online business industry. And I think that's kind of around the time that you found me from before we hit record. You said you started following me 12 years ago, which is a long time ago. And that was right at the prime of just, let me just share everything. And it just started to attract people to the brand. And I started to write books and speak on stage and, sell a lot of courses and such. And here we are now. And it was just me for like 6 or 7 years until I finally got smart and, learned about hiring people. And Matt came along the way eventually. But that's where Smart Passive Income came from. And I'm just super grateful because although the layoff was probably one of the hardest things I ever went through, it was probably the best thing that could have ever happened.
I've got so many questions. It's actually one of my good friends, Ryan Clements. He just actually in the last couple of years finished his doctorate in law around cryptocurrency and is like advising the Canadian government on securities laws for how to handle it. So, but after your stuff and everything, he went on to write his own book and did TED Talks and used a lot of your principles. And it took me a few years, but I finally started my own show as well here. Um, so I think what's revolutionary at that time is like this idea of sharing all your income and like exactly what's going on. Uh, I mean, what an incredible magnet. And obviously, so many people have copied you since, and it even did well for them, even though they weren't first. But like, it was incredible for the rest of us to like, you know, to be able to have that genuine look behind the curtain of like, does it actually work? And you were so honest about like, oh, this went down this month, guys. And we kind of got this like voyeur feeling of like that we were right along in the car watching you drive this journey, you know? And I'm not surprised all the millions of followers and downloads and how well your shows have done. And I watch your YouTube channel and have bought your books. And I'm not surprised because it's like you've always exuded this like sense of generosity, and it makes you really easy to share to my friends. Let's switch for 1 second. Matt, how did you get on the SPI train here?
Uh, Around the 5-year anniversary mark, I'm proud to say, that was when Pat was writing his memoir called Let Go, to start to kind of begin to memorialize some of these teachings and stories that he was just mentioning. And at the time, I had a creative production company, creative agency that was really working with professional creators that that's how we think of them today. Professional writers, authors, some YouTubers, some podcasters. The notion of this like all-in idea of creators hadn't occurred yet, but that's essentially what we were doing. So through some mutual friends, Pat and I got connected. That memoir project, Let Go, was our first project together. Big success, and we just started to like, okay, what else could we do together? So as my company was growing, so was SPI. We started just naturally kind of found ourselves in this kind of serendipitous relationship that increasingly became a friendship. Our families got to know each other. So like we just kind of grew close together, and we would trade business advice, kind of, unofficially on the side to support one another. And fast forward to 2018, it's like, you know what? Like, this is the best work we're doing. My business had grown, SPI had grown, but, let's go maybe all in together and like do something, more real than ever. So that's what we did. So we folded the companies together. The new media company was born, after that. And we're doing a lot of things different than we've ever done. And it's, I think, really a testament to just evolving as entrepreneurs and business leaders and trying to serve still with the same ethos, but like really think about like what's new and different now in 2020 than even back in 2008 when Pat first started.
Yeah. So why don't we dive into that? What is one of the things you're most excited for over the next years to come here?
Well, so much. What we always consider is like what is most helpful to the audience who's learning, right? And in the beginning, it was just information. This is why I think my lead exam website took off, because that information didn't exist before. So I compiled it, put it together, and it did very well. It put it on the map, and I was able to get paid for that. And then bringing those principles into the smart passive income world in the entrepreneurial space, we have been creating a lot of online courses about how to start a podcast, how to do affiliate marketing, email marketing, all those kinds of things. But we're also noticing that there's a shift now. I mean, in fact, this is what my next book is about. It's about the fact that the information is freely available almost everywhere now. Like, that's not a problem anymore, is to get the information. The problem is, how do we filter that information, and how do we actually put things in our favor to actually execute on the important things? And this is where Matt and I are both really excited for the future of online education, and we're trying to really paint a picture for what it's going to be like for others and pave the way even. And that's this idea of even community-powered courses, or just community in general. The idea that, yeah, the information's free, but you're still going to need help. You're still going to need guidance. And much like going to the gym, it's much easier to go to the gym and get motivated to do so when you're doing it with other people who are also sharing the same goals, who are in the same part of life with you, et cetera. So we can, with our reach and with our clout, be able to bring people together in a safe space to be able to go through that material together, or even just to connect. It's even, we launched our first community, SPI Pro, in 2020 during the pandemic. And that was really important because people were craving connection, but we weren't able to connect like the ways we were used to. So we built our online version of those moments at conferences in the hallway, when you're connecting with people and you're sharing advice and you're collaborating and partnerships are forming. We built SPI Pro to house a safe space for our community to come together, our existing entrepreneurs, not beginners. We have another community for that we launched recently, but people who have established businesses, who are at that stage in their entrepreneurial journey, who could share the ups and downs and all those kinds of things with each other. And we ran a survey when we launched that. We said, what do you want in here? And we listed a whole bunch of different things that we could offer. And the lowest mark, or the thing that people did not want the most, was more content. They literally were like, we don't want more content. We need connection, and we need a place to find other people like us. Because I think that's just the human element. We want to feel like we belong to something. We want to feel connected, and we want to have people understand what we're going through. So we can step forward as leaders and facilitate those offerings. And what's beautiful is, I mean, it takes a lot of work. It requires effort to put together, but it can get to a tipping point where now the community is serving itself. They're serving each other. They're talking to each other. They're helping each other out. And we can just be there as guides and facilitators versus being the center of attention, because we aren't the hero of the story. We are the guides. It's the hero very much in the world of Donald Miller and the Story Brand book that he has. Our students, our members, are the hero of the story. So we just happen to be the guide to help them along the way. And what happens is, when we share those stories from the inside of our community, when we invite them to come onto our microphone on our podcast and tell their transformation story and how SPI Pro is a part of that, then people on the outside go, oh, I want in. I want to join this too. These are my people. So that's the beauty of having like an outside content play in conjunction with something on like that is more like a filtered space where people can come together. So that's what I'm really, really excited about, because honestly, of all the things that I've created over the past 15 years of doing this, we have not gotten this kind of feedback from the transformations we've ever offered before. Like life-changing feedback, and people partnering together to create separate companies and partnerships, and it's just amazing. And again, it all comes down to people. So it's no longer what it was, which was a Pat just telling the story and then you kind of follow along Pat. It's Pat and Matt and team creating a space for you and you and you to all come together to find each other and just make magic happen. And that's the cool thing. We don't know the outcomes, because the outcomes are almost limitless when you bring these kinds of minds together.
So I had a friend who is a author, anyways, a guy with a lot more credibility than me asked me to run a mastermind with him. Okay. We charged these CEOs like 30 grand for the year. And it was a lot about like getting their LinkedIn presence going and getting a book written. And I definitely wasn't qualified to teach it, but he let me help facilitate it anyways. And I definitely think that the students got as much from each other as they did from us, for sure. But like me as a supposed instructor, I got so much like watching them implement things that I hadn't even implemented yet. And it's like, oh man, that seems like so much work. And all of a sudden you start seeing them do it, and then it adds up, and all of a sudden they pass these milestones. You're like, what was I doing? I just, like, the same amount of time went by. They started, I didn't. They've accomplished, I haven't. And it is killing it for them. Like, I'll tell on one of them, Stacy Havener. She's been on the show. She runs a third-party marketing firm for investment funds. Like if you quit at Goldman Sachs after 20 years and you want to start your own fund, she helps you raise your first 100 million or something. Okay. So she's raised like $8 billion for these fund managers. And she decides to start going on LinkedIn, and she follows. So it's Josh Steinle, my friend, we did this together. He's been on here as well. She starts just posting every day. And it gets to the point, like within a few months, she has a sales rep say, hey, could you post less on LinkedIn? We can't handle all the leads. She's like, no, we're just going to hire more salespeople. But you're like, there's another guy in the group, when he went from 0 to having his book done and published and sent me the hard copy, and I hadn't finished mine. All of a sudden it's like, there's this belief factor that like, no matter how many books I'd read on writing a book, no matter how many videos I've watched, all these things, there was this different effect of like being in the group with the people that I know and understand, and their problems and their capabilities. And like, I think about other groups I've been in where it's like, hold on, they pulled that off? I could do this. Like, it's like a little bit of like ego shows up in a good way. And anyways, I'm a fan of like, I mean, for how many thousands of years have humans learned from humans? Look at the apprenticeship models and the guilds from, Italy in the 1500s. And like, it's just we're just so hardwired to benefit from the human connection and learning from what another human has done, and pattern recognition and copying. I mean, Matt, what do you have to jump in here on this subject about?
I'd say that so much of the aspiration has been there, even from the very early days of like, the 20 aughts and the beginning of even like Blogger and like trying to like form maybe digital community, but like there was just the natural technological evolutionary curves that hadn't happened yet. So, going from the blogosphere and then podcasting maybe got a little more intimate because you could hear people's voices, and then like moving the puck forward through, the rise of social media, like these different stages of like the internet, if you zoom back over 20 years. Like, I think we've all been, to your point, about people craving people and connection and learning from each other. Like, it's always been there. But with now where we are, like we can actually harness and build community in a more palpable and like, I dare say, like real way than ever, right? Using new technologies and new methods that are now available to us. And we didn't have these even 5 years ago, let alone 10. So like, using a platform like Circle that we use to build our communities didn't exist. They're taking a very like Notion-esque approach, which is fantastic in our opinion, which is a very modular structure. So we can, as the community builders, design and implement our community that is more like in our design versus like an out of the box, one size fits all model to community, which is great because communities are diverse and dynamic and always evolving and changing. So like, that's been really helpful. So I think like there's always been that promise and aspiration of the community, but like thankfully now we can actually do it in a way that we've just never been able to do before. I don't see that ship slowing down though, right? So like in terms of our advocacy around wanting to teach the methods that are working and where's this going? Like this drive to be online and achieve more financial independence and freedom for yourself and for your family, that is still at the epicenter of everything we do with SPI. This is now really what Pat and I are motivated by to not even teach, but genuinely shift a lot of our business model and pivot into more of this where we have subscription-based products, for memberships, for communities specifically. And then even what Pat mentioned in passing there is now the rise of what's called community-powered courses. So it's sort of a hybridization between really thoughtful education and community-based elements to be more pathway-oriented to help people get from, A to B and then from B to C in their journey as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and there's also even above that, and something that we've experimented with within our company are cohort-based courses, which are similar to community sort of flavored courses, but with a little bit more of an intensive sort of structure to it. And we've done like 4 or 6 week programs where we bring people in who, whether they have gotten access to our digital courses yet or not, they just haven't gotten the results that they were expecting, but they need that push. They need that accountability. And so we would develop a structure over a number of weeks where we meet twice a week and there's homework and there's worksheets to fill out and all those kinds of things. And the completion rates of those just completely outperform just a DIY situation. And again, to go back to what I was saying earlier, it's like having the information is one thing, and many people can use the information and get through it if they're motivated enough, and if that problem is something that they really need to solve, then sure. But in many cases, people will get information, and how many times do we get a book or buy a course and we just don't go through it or aren't motivated to? When it's on a schedule and when there's other people involved to hold you accountable, you can get those results. And that's our job, is to get people those results and create that transformation. And we believe that the community aspect on top of that, or behind it really, is what's going to get them there. And to Matt's point of technology, I mean, that stuff wasn't really available in the way that it is now. And Matt had mentioned a company at circle.so. Full disclosure, Matt and I are both advisors to that tech company. So I just wanted to be fully upfront with that. But there's a lot of great options out there for community, but Circle is by far, in our opinion, the most advanced and easiest to use as well on both sides. So yeah.
Well, it's funny. I just joined a group on Circle. Do you know, oh man, do you know the book, Write Useful Books? It's the guy who wrote the Mom Test, Rob Fitzpatrick. Anyways, it's all about like how much density per page is your book, and like what a service you're doing to readers to actually just be exceedingly helpful exceedingly quickly. And he comes from a tech background, and he approached writing a book like a tech product. So he has this whole system with beta readers and all this stuff to like just have like many iterations of your book before it actually comes out. So you already know it works. You're not like putting out hoping people like it. You've already passed that kind of thing. And anyway, so his program, like if you want to learn the methodology and join a community of other people who are doing all these beta readers, is also on Circle. And it's interesting product there. So Pat, thinking about your numbers over these last 15 years, do you have stats like how many downloads or how many YouTube views, how many books sold, any of those that you can share?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, for a very long time, like you mentioned earlier, I was sharing all these numbers up front, and then eventually they got too big. And what I mean by that is they
weren't as
it was
relatable.
less relatable, exactly, which is why they stopped. And, I had shared publicly why they were going to come to an end, but people really did enjoy them. And I think that just speaks to how people want to just know all that's going on, and they want the full sort of picture before either investing into something. And that's really the original reason why I did that. It's like, if you're going to invest in a company in the stock market, you get a quarterly report on how the company's doing. And so if people are going to invest time and or money with me, I need to tell people how the company's doing and what I'm learning and what's working and what's not, and just be honest. And it seemed to work really well. But as far as download numbers, I mean, the SPI podcast, or the Smart Passive Income podcast, is just about to cross 70 million total downloads since July of 2010, which is really incredible. I'm just in my home, and I was this shy guy who was too afraid to put his face on camera. And then eventually I started the YouTube channel, and the YouTube channel's been doing very well. I think we're going to cross 30 or 40 million views total since 2010. But I don't know if you know this, but I also started sort of a side hobby YouTube channel in the Pokemon space. It's sort of a side thing. One thing I love to do is have a little bit of room to play, right? 80% of my time per week is invested to the things that I've already committed to, et cetera. And then 20% of time, or 1 day a week, is my play time or experimental time. In 2017 to 2019, that play time was used to invent something called the Switch Pod, and that has done really well. We actually launched in February of 2019 on Kickstarter to about $500,000 and over 4,000 backers in 60 days, which was really cool. And that product still continues to run in a more automated fashion now, just through Amazon, really. But lately, it's been a new YouTube channel in the Pokemon space that has taken off and already has surpassed my views that I've had for 10 years on SPI, only within the first year and a half, which is kind of insane. But it's a much broader audience, right? It's entertainment, and kids and adults both love Pokemon. But as far as numbers, as far as the website, I mean, it's I haven't checked the website stats in a very long time, but they've been pretty steady year over year, and we're in the tens of millions of total views and such. But honestly, what is very important to me is how many people have trusted me and Matt and the company enough to invest their dollars into the education that we're offering. And we've had, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 paying students since 2017 invest in themselves and into our education material to get results. And what's beautiful is now this is going into the community as well, with nearly 1,000 people in our SPI Pro community, which is our cap. We don't want it to grow too big. But it's just the results that are happening in there are even better than just what the DIY course is. And then, of course, we have like our lead magnets and other things, challenges that people get into that thousands of people join every single month. And again, the numbers might sound huge and impressive, but the truth is, like, every person that we know who is taking our course or subscribed to our list is a real human being. And that's really important to us. And that was something that I really struggled with before Matt came on. As the company grew really quickly, when it was just me, I started feeling less connected to who it was that I was serving. And so it was important for me to either reduce my growth expectations or hire people or burn out, right? And I didn't want to slow down, and I didn't want to burn out, so I hired people.
I want to talk about this because we have a lot of founders of, like, high growth companies, a lot of venture backed folks that are either on the show or listeners of the show, right? And I want to talk about this idea of letting go of the reins a little bit and letting people do things that you used to do, and there's things that CEOs who are going to scale will have to go through. What was it about Matt that you thought, man, I can trust this? Or what were the attributes that you were looking for that you found?
Yeah, well,
when you were
there's a book called Rocket Fuel, which is really amazing, right? It's about the visionary and the integrator sort of relationship. And I'm very much a more visionary person. And I think it was clear that I have so many big ideas and could only do and execute so much. And a lot of the stuff within execution, I'm just not well versed in, but was able to finagle my way through with some earlier, smaller projects. But really, the first big project I worked on with Matt is really what defined what a true integrator could potentially do. I mean, it was his company who was helping to edit and publish my first book, Let Go. And that project was so smooth. It just like, how is this easy? Oh, because I actually had a person who knew what they were doing along with me. And that's why I wanted to continue to chat with Matt, because I had a lot of other big visions and big projects to work on that I knew Matt and his organizational skills and his love for spreadsheets and all this other stuff that I just want to avoid. It was a perfect sort of eventual marriage in a way. And so Also, what was important was not just that he had the skills that could fill in a lot of the gaps that I had, but most of all, just he cared about the audience as much as I did. Even when it was just from a working relationship with his agency that I just hired, like he actually cared for the people and the readers, and that's what attracted me to Matt as well. And then when we combined forces in 2018. Matt, although an incredible integrator, is also a visionary, and he was able to offer a lot of great ideas for where this company could go and how we could continue to grow and scale. And if it wasn't for him, this sort of work into community wouldn't have happened, or at least not as soon. And the team behind it, which is mostly Matt's doing, is his specialty as well. So I owe a lot to Matt, and it was very difficult for me to let go of a lot of things, especially as somebody who was working in the business on my own for quite a while and wearing all the hats, very proud that I was wearing all the hats. But again, it got to the point where I was feeling stretched thin, and to be stretched thin in the business as well as also stretched thin as a husband and a father, I knew something had to give, and I wasn't going to give up a relationship or my kids just to kind of grow in business. So I needed to let go of a lot of things, and you eventually find out that, wow, there are people who do these things much better and faster than you ever could, and who actually love doing those things. It's like, why did I wait so long?
So I love that book. I recommend it to CEOs all the time. And I guess my question for you, because I'm going to ask a reverse question to Matt here in a minute, but if you had advice for founders who, they're doing the kind of dollars that it makes sense to look for that integrator role, what's one principle? Obviously somebody who scores off the charts on those integrator, and by the way, everybody should just buy the book and take the tests. Okay. But, so obviously somebody that scores well, somebody who's got a track record, but are there any other tips that you have for another CEO who's like, okay, I'm ready to bring on this integrator who can be our, whether it's chief operations officer, president, whatever that title ends up being. But
yeah, I mean, what helped with me was the ability to work on a particular project, a singular project, and see what that was like. That was contained, almost like in a petri dish, where you can kind of experiment and see what happens. And if it kind of goes out of control, you can just throw that petri dish in the trash, right? But we found a winning formula that worked in that first petri dish that we worked together on, and we were like, okay, let's copy that formula in all these other projects that we were doing. So we had like pipettes going just right off the bat there.
I love it.
But that was what was key, that the ability to actually experience what that help was like first before committing fully and bringing them on board. Now, that may or may not be possible, but if possible, that's definitely the route that I would recommend.
I'm such a big fan of date before you get married. I love that answer.
Right.
So, Matt, I want to ask in reverse. I know a lot of crazies who have scored off the charts on the visionary number, right? And they desperately, desperately need somebody like you to like keep the mess together and get to the next level. When you thought about somebody like Pat, who you actually wanted to hitch your wagons to, I mean, like visionaries typically drive integrators nuts, like who got trying to stuff 100 pounds of stuff into a 50-pound bag and, giving the whole team whiplash. How about this? How about that? Like, when you decided like, no, I think this one's going to work. I think it's what I want to do. What was that decision like for you, or how did that decision tree work?
It was remarkably natural, honestly, because I've been through that exact fire multiple times. I've had past ventures with different business partners, always typically some version of a visionary. Sometimes in retrospect, there were signals there that maybe were like, hey, like maybe this wasn't going to work. I had an e-commerce studio company, agency company that was specializing in, for example, Shopify Plus brand, doing 20, 30, $40 million on Shopify. We did a lot of custom work for them. So that was a venture that was ultimately acquired, but had an unfortunate sort of falling out with that particular partner. And I have a couple of those stories where just over time, relationships are difficult, in the business world. So I'm proud to say that I have a couple of smaller exits under my belt, nothing like some of these bigger ones of folks that you've had on your show. But all to say is like, I have enough kind of battlefield experience in a certain way, working with folks that kind of know like, okay, when 2018 came around and a lot of those stories were sort of behind me at that point, I still believe in a romantic notion of partnership. I really do. That, I can be a better version of myself if I find the right person to work with. And because of the relationship with Pat that I had at that point, I want to say like 7 or 8 years working with Pat. And then again, comparatively with some of my other business partnerships, I knew that like, okay, all of this stuff that I had gone through, and some of it was, at least in that one instance, pretty traumatic. It ultimately was a positive because it led me to knowing that Pat was the right person, to like, okay, I've done all of this dating, if you want to, yeah, continue to use the metaphor, so that like I know that this is the right one. So yeah, it was so natural, like in that moment, to be able to make that decision. And it's wonderful to know and hear that, kind of it worked out for Pat in that same way. Because that chemistry, like getting that chemistry right, is in fact difficult. And I think in the book, even the rocket fuel book, I think Gino says like there's 10 visionaries for every one integrator. So like the ratio isn't all that great for folks like me. But it did work out ultimately fantastically well with Pat.
So same question here. Advice to an integrator who's saying like, am I really doing this? Am I really going to hitch my wagons to this visionary? What's a question they should be asking themselves?
I'd say the question is like when there's a disagreement, like how do you solve disagreement? Disagreement can be a very positive thing. Like I don't believe that debating really good ideas is inherently bad or evil or anything in a negative capacity. So like when there's a different idea around how to implement an idea or how to prioritize a set of different ideas, right? To think about resourcing, to think about your team's capacity, to think about your own time and energy. When you potentially hit some fork in the road and you just, okay, we're not deciding, how does that decision then get settled if there's a bit of a log jam? And if you just go back to the book, actually what Gino says is that the integrator gets the tiebreaker. So like thinking that through both at a meta level, like how do you process, disagreement constructively, aspirationally still in alignment with the company's vision? And then if there really is a log jam, can the visionary say, okay, I'm generally going to trust you, the integrator to make the right call because it's really going to be probably on your shoulders to get it done. There's this notion around like disagree and commit versus just agreeing to disagree. It's a profound different thing. Pat and I talk about that with our team. So if the visionary can genuinely be like, okay, maybe Matt, I disagree with you, but I'm going to support you, right? I'm going to let you do this. I think that's the litmus test.
It's a great litmus test. Um, so let's switch gears. Let's go back to the community thing for a minute. So, Matt, I'll start with you. I'm listening to the show and I'm like, man, these guys are awesome. Actually, I do like, there are a bunch of questions that I have, and I think I would benefit from hearing how other entrepreneurs are solving this. So I'm going to come to the Smart Passive Income website and I want to learn more about the communities. Actually, is that the best place? Where's the best place?
Probably the best place to go would be to visit smartpassiveincome.com/community. But for two reasons. One is that's where you can learn about our actual community offerings. But then also you can just study how we're doing it. You can see how we are positioning community, how we're building it, what are the components, and hopefully drive some really tangible ideas for your own community if that's, your particular
Okay.
interest.
So I don't have time to do that. I just, in like the next 30 seconds, what's your pitch? Why should I join?
Yeah, it's a more sustainable business model, both right now and probably for the next reasonably predictable future, right? In terms of where online business is going, you can have a more intimate relationship with your customers that are also your fans. They can serve number two as your own like R&D laboratory where if you listen closely enough, they will tell you exactly what they want both today and into the future. So you can continually harvest new and better ideas, and be able to build those things going forward. Three, if you implement, a paid kind of component, which we do recommend pretty significantly, then you have an MRR, recurring revenue, more predictable revenue. And I'd say number four, it's just more enjoyable to be able to continually learn and reinvest a lot of your energy back into this special thing that you're creating from a community. So I think it ticks most boxes from the economics to the sustainability side to just, why are you even in this thing at all?
Yeah, I love it. On Friday, I interviewed a guy who he's built two companies over 500 million a year, and then started a VC fund called Wing VC. And he's been able to pick 22 companies that grew over the billion mark so far. And to him, the primary skill sets are like, are recruiting. Can you recruit a good enough good enough team that can build companies like us? And do you have a deep learning mindset? He thinks that's the number one thing CEOs need to scale is a deep learning mindset. And to me, like as you're talking about communities, I'm like, oh, Gar would think that was great for like ongoing learning, like having built in ongoing learning, like learning from your customer instead of sitting in your Ivy Tower thinking you're doing great because your company's growing. So I want to reverse this. Pat, what would you say similar or different than what Matt already covered?
You can't read the label when you're inside the bottle, and you need outside perspective to understand the full story. We never understand the full story on our own, no matter how great we think we are. I'm speaking from personal experience, and we just talked about what had happened when Matt came on. Matt has been talking about what happens when you connect with your own company and your own customers. And then the same thing happens as far as you, the listener, joining a community yourself to have access to other people who are going through the same journey as you, who have maybe gone a couple steps ahead so they can tell you what's coming up on the path ahead. But a way for you to also practice by teaching others who are maybe just a couple steps behind as well, and to reinforce things that are working. But also, like I said, to get that outside perspective that you can't get anywhere else. It is well worth the investment to join a group of some sort, whether it's our community or another community or Jess's or whoever. I have invested in other groups, mastermind groups in particular, 2 of which that I've been a part of for over 10 years now, to a point where we know the other people sometimes better than they know themselves. And to get that brutally honest but respectable feedback has changed my life. But it always comes from other people. So that's my pitch for just placing yourself with other people in communities.
And I guess maybe I should clarify this. Am I joining a community to learn how to grow my own community? Is that what it is?
SPI Pro? It can be. Many of our SPI Pro members specifically also want to build a community, and there are spaces inside of Circle for those people to connect with each other. But it's a place for you to connect with other entrepreneurs across all different levels, minus the beginner. The beginner is in a separate community that we have that has a different set of problems and things that they're trying to overcome, like imposter syndrome or just even deciding what niche to be in. But if you have a business already and you're looking to connect with other business owners and have a connection to other people in the creator space and get feedback and get eyeballs on other things, no matter what it is you do, whether you want to create a community, you're a YouTuber, you're a podcaster, you are a TikTok person, you are building audience and you are a part of the creator economy, the SPI Pro community is definitely the spot to be in.
Thinking about the creator community, I keep having just having people on the show who are like, they've really accomplished what the rest of the world would think of as a lot when it comes to business. And statistically, they're in like the 0.001% of achievers, right? And yet they still have further ambitions. And they end up talking to me like, Jess, this show is great. Like you've met a lot of great people. Like this seems like this is pretty good for you. I was like, oh, yeah, it's great. It's all these people I wish I knew I get to connect with. And I can just tell like they're interested they're interested in becoming creators, and they're talking to me about becoming creators. And some of them have, since coming on the show afterwards, become a creator. When you think about any stories for like somebody who's considering, and there's all the self-image fears of like, well, I'm a sophisticated business person already. Will people think less of me if I become a YouTuber now, or I start, I don't know if I'm that good a writer, if I start writing on LinkedIn all the time or do these things. Pat, can you maybe tell us a story or two of just like the kind of benefits that have come from you of like going first, helping people in a non-transactional way, and like this givingness that you've done in your creator journey, and like maybe rewards that exceeded your own expectations or anything like that?
Sure. I interviewed a man named Jordan Harbinger. He's a fellow podcaster. And he told me this amazing analogy of like how to go about life such that you can get whatever you want. It's very similar to Zig Ziglar's "You can have anything you want in life so long as you help other people get what they want first." But Jordan talked about it in the sense of like a layoff lifeline, because he was going through a time where he had gotten actually kicked out of his own business from his partners, and it was really tough, but he was actually able to call upon the relationships that he had built over time to, actually save his life and save his business. So these layoff lifelines, it's essentially like digging your well before you're thirsty. if you dig your well and you're thirsty, it's too late. And by that, it's just all about relationships and reaching out to people and checking up on them and seeing how they're doing for no other reason than to just check up on them and keep that relationship going. And one exercise that we could all do right now while listening to this is to go into your phone, into your text message app, scroll all the way to the bottom and see who have you not reached out to in a very long time. I have an exercise every single month that I do is I go through and do exactly that. And I just, whatever time I have available, I try to reach out and just check on them and see how they're doing. And I cannot tell you how often that opens up new opportunities and new doors and just rekindles relationships that were just for whatever reason left behind, to a point where they now want to have me on their show or want to promote my book or any of this kind of stuff, all without ever hard asking for that. It just is a natural part of the law of reciprocity and what happens when you step up to serve others first. The universe just has this amazing way of paying you back, right? And there's a woman in our community inside of SPI Pro. Her name's Maria. She has a podcast called Bloom and Grow Radio, and she is very special. She has done so much to contribute to a lot of the other people in the community that when she came out with her podcast and came out with her book, the entire community was all in support of it because she was just so helpful in stepping up and helping other people in that community too. She was also one of our winners for one of our challenges, our 60-second pitch video challenge, where we taught our community how to create a 60-second pitch, and she won that, and I invited her on the podcast, and that opened up more opportunities and things for her too. So to get a traditionally published book deal and have her podcast grow like it is in a space about houseplants is pretty amazing. So, that kind of support can come only when you help and serve others first. And that's what, to us, community is about as well. So, I hope that helps and paints a picture of like the style of business that we run and the style of business that we teach.
I love it. I do think about this show as like, it's so fun to be able to do somebody else a favor, like CEO of something, founder, whatever it is, author, and they're like, I get to give them free attention for this thing they're desperately trying to figure out how to get attention for. It's actually like fun. I feel like it's almost like a form of service of like, I get to do them a favor when they really can't do anything for me. It's almost like a sport.
Yeah. And there'll be a time down the road, Jess, when you perhaps launch something or you have initiative for your child rescue program. And it's like, it will be very easy for you to call upon those relationships at that time without any sort of weirdness. That's the other, like if I reach out to somebody who I haven't talked to in a while and I'm just like, hey, I have this new book. Can you like push it out for me? It's like, we haven't chatted in years, dude. Like you have done nothing for me. And now you're asking for something. And then here you are providing this incredible service and providing a lot of exposure and giving people a platform. You are allowing them to come on to share their story, which helps serve others as well, and put them in the spotlight. I mean, that's of service and that is of value. And so when the time comes, it is going to be very easy for you to be able to call upon that help.
Okay. Matt, you're in this world all day, every day. When you think about creators and the business of being a creator, specifically, let's take people who are already in business and now they want to add being a creator to kind of pour a little gas on the fire, right? What's one piece of advice you would have for people maybe as they're looking at 2023? What's something coming down the pipe that maybe not everybody realizes that you kind of get to see from your perspective of doing all this fun stuff?
I think purely on the business side, it's just a new form of partnership that we can start to do within the creator community. Because a lot of like the product suites are evolving and changing, we're not just having, a litany of online courses that are, on-demand education. There's different ways to structure collaboration deals and partnerships that, I think maybe the North Star is still maybe the same or pretty similar in terms of being altruistic and trying to help and teach and promoting of certain transformations, for the end user. But there's just different ways to partner, different vehicles through community, through different forms of even cohort-based courses, which is, again, a variant to education. Maven.com is a great platform for delivering those sorts of products. So I think my encouragement, like if you're in the creator space, especially if you have like other businesses or past business experience, like being able to bring in other experts like into your education or community, do private programming, special events, being able to do special events like we do at SPI is increasingly easier. Well, like the barriers to entry are coming down. The technology is getting better. We just did a big special event last week with our partners at Circle. Pat and I, another tech company we advise is Hey Summit, heysummit.com, which makes it really easy for a creator to be able to organize and execute on their own event. So being able to pull people together in new experiences online is, I think, something that maybe people have been a little reluctant to consider or invest some time and energy into, because I don't know, it feels hard and heavy and maybe difficult, and I don't want to do that. But it's becoming more approachable and integrated into community and in other forms of your kind of your business apparatus. It's becoming more lucrative. It's more successful. You can make it work, and everyone can benefit from it.
Same question for you, Pat. What would you add to that?
I mean, Matt took the words right out of my mouth with what's coming and what's exciting. I think, beyond that, I think what's really interesting is the how social media plays a role into this. Social media, when it came around, was so exciting to me because I was like, we're all going to connect so much more than ever now, and this is amazing. But it actually had the opposite effect, where we all now feel sort of alone and just like maybe even envious of certain people because of social media versus what it was supposed to bring us closer together, which is why I think a lot of these tools and even social media now, I think if we think about how we could use it differently, like I talk about in my book, Superfans, it's like, these are all opportunities, even free ways to do it, to connect with the actual human being that's on the other end. And I think the companies that focus more on that actual human-to-human connection, it's not, as my buddy Chris Ducker says, B2B or B2C. It's P2P, the person-to-person connection. And that's what's beautiful about community. It like fosters that. It's like inherent in that. But even on social media, one of my favorite things to do is every Friday I take my dogs out on a 30-minute walk, and I have them on the leashes on one of my hands. The other hand has my phone out, and I'm just walking around responding to people who have recently commented on my Instagram comments with a personalized video. It's just, hey, Jess, I saw you commented on my last post. I just want to say thanks for being a fan and for watching the channel and listening to the podcast. Like, is there anything I could do to help you? Let me know, and have a wonderful weekend. 98% response rate. People's minds are blown away when every other person that they're connected with had the exact same opportunity to reach out, but they didn't. So if you step up to make those connections with, again, no other reason other than to just make sure that they know that they're there, they often become super fans. They often become customers, repeat customers, and ambassadors of your brand. And I think what's exciting is like there are now more and more technologies and platforms that allow us to even have more opportunities to do that. We are big fans of a product called Bonjoro, which allows one to, as soon as they become a customer, as soon as they become a subscriber even, you can set it up however you'd like, you will get a notification on your phone. And you don't have to have them notify you right away. You can get them in batches. But essentially, if you signed up for one of our courses, for example, I would get a notification that says, like, Jess signed up for Power Up Podcasting or whatever. I could immediately hit a button, record a video that says, hey, Jess, saw you just purchased Power Up Podcasting like a minute ago. I wanted to reach out and say thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to your podcast. Let us know if you need anything, and be sure to come into the community because we got a lot of people there who are waiting for you because we want to root you on. I mean, now people know that they've spent their money in the right place. They're getting support.
Yeah, what's the website for
Bonjoro,
that?
Bonjoro, and it's an incredible system. ConvertKit, another company that I advise, had hired a person to do just those Bonjoro videos for new customers. And this is a software, the email service provider now has a personalized touch as soon as you subscribe to it. And it reduced churn from it was an ungodly number, the churn reduction as a result of just that first touch point and that first impression. So anyway, the human to human stuff is really key.
Okay, if I haven't said it already, everybody listening should go buy Pat's books. I bought them myself and listened to them on Audible. And I think what I liked from Superfans too is like, this is something I feel like you've lived ever since I started following your stuff a dozen years ago, is like the real like human to human aspect. Like I think that is something that it's created, so many people who keep following you year after year, is that really comes through. And when so many things are able to be automated these days, I think it really helps you stand out. And like the brand of Pat Flynn and SPI, I think has really benefited from that over the years. I know we're winding down here. One more time, where are the best places for people to connect and learn more?
Yeah, so if you're listening to this podcast, you're awesome. You should listen to ours. The Smart Passive Income Podcast would be great. It's a very quick, easy search on the platform that you're on now for the Smart Passive Income Podcast. Matt and I are both, active on social media. I mean, Twitter is pretty much the spot for sort of conversations like that. I'm at Pat Flynn. Matt is at Matt Gartland. And the community stuff that we're most excited about, you can find at smartpassiveincome.com/community. And you can see how we do what we do there. And we're always welcome to new applicants as well to see if it's the right fit on both sides. And just, Jess, thank you so much for having us on. And we appreciate the ability to talk about the stuff that we nerd about every day, but often don't capture these conversations for. So just thank you for allowing us to share it.
I will say this, like, because of the quality of our previous guests, we are to the point where we're typically turning down kind of 85 or 90% of people asking to be on the show. And you were just like an absolute instant yes, because you've just helped me so much over the years. It was like I was excited and immediately talked to my coworker. I was like, hey, guess who asked you to be on the show? Pat Flynn. And he's like, oh, really? Because he's been following you as well over the years. And so it's fun. And Matt, super nice to meet you here. I really like your approach to business.
Yeah,
so.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been a blast.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, well, thanks everybody for listening, and catch us on our next episode.